Bei uns geht es jetzt weiter mit dem Thema Hamburger Hafen, unter anderem, oder ganz mit dem Thema Hafen. And I'll switch to English again, because this panel is very international. I am joined here in Hamburg by Jens Meier. He's CEO of the Hamburg Port Authority. And you can come up stage, please. And on the line, we have from Rotterdam, Marom. He is head of Autonomous Transport Center. And from Malaysia, there is Neelsen. He is CEO of the port of Tanjung, Pelepas. Hi. It is nice to see you.
Good evening.
So we get to sit as well. So, yeah, thanks for joining me. Yeah. And thanks, guys, for being on the line. I want to start just kind of with a sort of introduction round. And maybe you can each tell me, first of all, what currently or planned the most interesting futuristic transport system is at your port. Since you're sitting next to me, Jens, I will start with you. What is the most interesting project, or what is planned that will become the most interesting project here in Hamburg?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Great pleasure for me to join this with my friends via video conference. The most exciting project from my point of view is mobility improvement by using traffic light signal control with quantum computing and using artificial intelligence. That is a combination, and the name of that project is Mozart. And we try to intend to use the existing infrastructure in the port with more efficiency, and that means avoid traffic jams, reduce emissions. And at the end, we want to keep the port in a flow, and this is part of the project we will present in October on the ITS World Congress here in Hamburg. And I'm really much looking forward also to see the results. The first results I already saw are really good, and I'm pretty sure that we can present to the world here a very successful project.
Okay. I feel a bit like at the Eurovision Song Contest, so I can now say we're not just in Europe, but maybe, Marco, what about you? What is the most interesting project that you guys have in Malaysia?
First of all, good afternoon to Hamburg from good evening Malaysia. It's 2100 here. I think there's a couple of things we are doing. Two which are quite interesting. One is on our terminal in PDP, it's a large terminal on one footprint, 5 kilometers of quay length. So for us, horizontal transport is interesting. So one thing we're looking at the moment is autonomous driving for our terminal tractors, or prime movers, as we call them, the ones who move the containers from the jetty to the yard and vice versa. And we have started a partnership with a company from Holland, Terberg Tractors, where we want to develop together autonomous prime mover, autonomous truck, which is obviously different than automated, because we have to phase it into our existing infrastructure, where you will have obviously interfaces between manual, traditional driven equipment and then autonomous equipment. So they have a factory here in Malaysia. That's why we have chosen Terberg, and we're working together with them. It's a few years project where we want to see how we can get these autonomous trucks onto the road or onto the terminal. The other one, which is already we are in the mid-set, is something we call asset digitization, where we really make a 3D footprint of the terminal, and actually through the GPS and so on, connecting all the mobile equipment from rubber-tire gantries trucks to little pickup vehicles, get them with GPS, and then actually that we can live track and trace equipment on the terminal, so that we every second really know where they are. We can steer them in advance. We can avoid bottlenecks. And equally interesting, what we do is we will we'll get a lot of data from these equipment, which we can use then later on into our maintenance regimes, which goes into then step into predictive maintenance, which just means equipment just lasts longer, transport systems last longer, and we want to come to the point that we have no more uncontrolled breakdowns, so that everything will be predicted.
Okay, last but not least, Ori.
Okay, so I'll tell about our developments, but first of all, I would like to thank you, Carla, and also to say that I'm very pleased to be with you, Jens and Marco. It's a great pleasure for us to share our developments and opinions with you, and I look forward to that. About the question, we have so many things that are happening now, and this is why we have an autonomous transport program at the port. We are looking at all three modalities or three types of modalities, which means, of course, a water-based borne transport and land-based transport, both inside the private premises and in the public domain. The public domain is very new because those technologies just come online now. And very excitingly for us, we have also a drone program where we are in discussions with the government to manage our own airspace up to 120 meters. So a lot is going on, and not least of that is connectivity and 5G programs that are supposed to enable those devices and machines. Without 5G, it would be very difficult to imagine that we can safely operate them. So I would say four different domains that are of high importance to us. If I have to cite only one, then I would choose to orient myself to Hamburg, because we were looking around for exciting technologies, and we found a company in Hamburg called Wärtsilä Voyage, and we contracted with them. We stole them from you, and we will develop with them some autonomous barges, just to understand, to explain the concept. We are looking, as many people know, into efficiency of transshipping containers, because Rotterdam is a huge center for transshipment. Many of the containers that are passing through Rotterdam are not even meant to be shipped to the European Union. And therefore, we would like to look at new solutions for passing them in a safe and secure way through the ports by autonomous machines, while keeping them outside of the jurisdiction of Europe. One way that we do that is by constructing a private road. It's called the container exchange road. But what we're going to do with Wärtsilä Voyage is to construct a very small barge, and we will finance it with the subsidy from the European Union. That's part of the Green Port initiative. And the goal there is to receive one container by a small barge, and to not to take any terminal berthing capacity, or at least very, very small footprint on the terminal water side, which is a huge constraint for our terminals. So it's a touch and go system. It's a roll-on, roll-off system where the barge receives from a mobile installation construction, like a slope, receives a container and immediately leaves. And we can implement it only with autonomous mobility, because this kind of a barge would not be economical if you look at the crew-based operation. It just would not work. But when machines are autonomous, we can think about new concepts like that. So that's of course supposed to operate in a swarm configuration. So they're supposed to be not one. We're going to try one, but we hope to operate them very soon. In large numbers, so you could think about hundreds of them operating at the port.
Well, I guess that already answers my second question as to how autonomous systems make ports more efficient. But yeah, if you take the factor people out, and you can operate them autonomously, generally it saves down the road, saves some money. But so Ori just said he stole a company from you, or a possible partner. It means you don't get to work with them anymore.
No, it was interesting to listen, because you were introducing this panel with the European contest, and maybe I got you totally wrong, because you asked me for the one most favorite project, so I skipped the other 4,000. I believe, we are working very close together in autonomous technologies, and we try to exchange also knowledge, because if we want to drive vessels or tugboats or some of these vehicles autonomous, we need more or less same standards. And I think Hamburg is also leading and also part of these working groups, what we call implement something like digital trust. That means, you need I always call the Hamburg Port Authority as infrastructure service provider. Yeah, but in nowadays into infrastructure also we have to put the IT infrastructure, and the IT infrastructure has to be safe and secure. So we also did the 5G testings, and when we talk about autonomous driving, flying, swimming, we have to ensure that the technology is absolutely trustful, that we avoid any incidents. We need to implement anti-collision algorithms and so on. And therefore, we try to work as close as possible with institutes, with universities, and specialized companies together. Sometimes we have the same partners, so I don't want to call it I steal something. It's I'm a master of computer science. I always call that pattern matching. That means using the best cases and generate the next step of the technology on top. And therefore, it was quite of a joke. We are working also together with Wärtsilä and also some other companies in the same areas. I hope this is not a real surprise.
No, of course, it's not a real surprise. But my question also is, that's a lot of infrastructure you have to provide. And that's the same for ports around the world. Marco, is that a lot? It's a lot to take on as a port on its own. Do you guys get help from the politics side, like the government, local government, or anything? Or do you say, no, we have to do everything on our own?
No, I think there is similar than what Jens just said. There is, of course, certain infrastructure which is provided from the government. It's also around dredging works and stuff like that. So infrastructure is definitely from it's coming from the Port Authority, from the government, from the political side. But I think Jens made an important point. It's not anymore just the concrete and the steel. There is much more to come. And I think that's also where we are in Malaysia. We are a little bit on a, let's say, educational journey with the government to say the port is not anymore the port it was 30 years ago. So you need to embark into this transition to be competitive. We have the second largest port of the world as our competitor on the other side of the border in Singapore, and they are really quite advanced in the way how their port authority pushes things forward. So and that does keep us on the tiptoes. So we're pushing there a lot, also with our government to explain to them what we expect and how we can keep in the game. At the same time, it's not going and begging. It's to say we need to collaborate, and there's definitely parts we do, but you need to provide a framework. And I think 5G is an example. We're also working here with the government, getting we have the LTE network around, connecting through a community system the other port and logistics players into the port. So a lot of this it's under discussion, and probably not as far as we are in the European Union, but on the way, I would say, on a positive way, with some setback in Corona, of course. Maybe one other point, we talked a lot about technology. I think one point I do not want to underestimate here, and this is something which is also on our side quite big on the agenda, is actually the people. To say the jobs in the port are also changing, right? So let's say the low-level jobs like on the driving or the classical blue-collar jobs, they're disappearing slowly because we talked about autonomous driving. But we have different job scopes coming up, different people, right? And not everybody will be a C-level. So we need technicians, we need people which can program PLCs and so on. And we need a new generation of people which have an interest to work in the port and have the right education to work in these jobs we have in the port environment in the future. And I don't know how is it so much in Europe, because it's a long time that I worked in Europe, but here is quite a problem, because young people, when they go into computer science and so on, they want to sit with Google in Singapore or with Lazada or WeChat. So port is quite uncool. So we're working quite on a program with the government to get people interested into the port industry and being young IT engineers, being several areas to say, it's also international business is fancy. try to join us here. And we also building up with the government, with university Sibylis to say what is required, what do we need in the ports for the future, what kind of knowledge the young graduates need to have if they join us in our industry.
I don't know. That's not a question for me. I'm assuming it's the same here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are discussing that, how the future of work is looking like. But first of all, Marco put the focus on that. Digitization, optimization, and automation. This is one piece of the chain. On the other side, today we must to put a focus on say thank you for the flexibility of the people to work with the new technology, to be as flexible as we saw in the past with all the disruptions we had. And now we have to think about the new education level and centers. Here in Hamburg, we have a lot of good examples, how to develop people who are working in the port, also for the next steps of their work life cycle, I would call that. And what we see, the people are willing to do to stay in the port. We see in Hamburg there's a high grade of identification, and we always put an eye on that we say keep the social license to operate in place, that the people accept the port, and the people who work in the port, that they still stay in love with that work. That means implement just helpful digitization processes which make their work easier, which make their work more efficient, but on the other side save their salary and their social status, I would call it.
I'll get to the point of acceptance in a second, but Ori, you're head of autonomous transport system at a port. I'm assuming that's a job that hasn't, or a job title that hasn't existed all that long. So same for you, work is changing. Where do you get your work, your new workforce from?
Definitely, that's an initiative that the Autonomous Transport Center is an initiative that is geared towards technology, but not less than that around people. The idea is that we will create a discussion and collaboration between very different people at the port. And I agree with Jens and with Marco that it's all about the people. We are not looking primarily at creating the most fascinating technologies, but we are interested in creating an efficient and sustainable port by using technology. So the Autonomous Transport Center is just a framework to create this kind of collaboration with our friends in the environmental management, with the HR, the labor unions, and indeed also with the commercial department of the port. So it's a very meaningful framework for us, and it goes well beyond the fact that the autonomous technologies are new to the port, and many people think that they're cool. It's a real problem how to introduce such technologies to ports, and in fact ahead of other parts of societies. I'll just give one example. A lot of money has been invested in modern self-driving cars and trucks, and most of the money would lie for the people who invested upwards of $40 billion today lies in transporting people. But we found more and more that those technologies are much more suitable at the current time for using in trucking. Trucks rarely visit city centers. They're mostly driving on highways. And therefore, it's simpler to automate them. And we are very happy to assist this trend by being a port. So we are not providing the most sophisticated environment, but we feel that we are providing the most conducive environment to the industry to develop solutions for society. So ports, indeed, they started out as great places of logistics and commercial activities and physical infrastructure, but they are receiving, we feel, new roles today, and they have to attract other peoples too.
So you're saying
we have over 100 people at the port, on the payroll of the port, that are technology people. Most of them are IT developers. That's very new to the port of Rotterdam. That's a very new trend. Not only, it goes well beyond artificial intelligence. That is my particular expertise. But I feel that that's not the important point. The important point is what is the role of a large port in Europe today and in Asia, of course.
That's actually my next question, or would be my next question for you. Are logistics, am I saying that right? You're saying logistics are kind of being forgotten when it gets, about when we talk about the hype of autonomous driving or of change in mobility? Especially like logistics at a port. I mean, we talk about a lot last mile logistics. There is a lot going on. But do you say that, or at the ports, logistics is being maybe overlooked as having a great potential? We should maybe focus more on that than on the cities?
Not exclusively industrial and logistical centers today. They have an important role to play in society beyond logistics. For example, they are, especially the maritime transport is responsible for a lot of emissions. So we feel we have the responsibility, at least to provide the conditions for the whole industry beyond the physical location of the port to transform itself. And about logistics, I would not underestimate its role. We have three pillars of a strategy at the Port of Rotterdam. First of all, and foremost, is operational excellence. Secondly is the energy transition, and only last is digitalization. And for good reason. If we are not efficient, then we are surely not sustainable. If we are not efficient, we also cannot afford the technologies that will allow us to reach a digital maturity. So efficiency for us is still number one.
I have to kind of interrupt our talk. The director, Andreas, keeps whispering in my ear, and I can barely hear him, so maybe he can turn up the volume just a little bit. But you were saying efficiency is still the most important goal. I guess that's for any logistics company or for any logistics operator is efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Another big topic is climate change, which for port is maybe not the most easiest to handle. Ships are getting bigger, but they're not necessarily getting greener. There's very little as a port that you can do about that. But what can ports do to become greener? Marco, we'll let you answer first.
Okay, I think, well, there is a few things definitely port can do also together with vessel operators. I think to start this journey, what we at a discussion at the moment to say we want to start getting a little bit of an overview. Where do we stand? So actually we have on a way to agree to do something like a port emission inventory, a digital port emission inventory to understand first where is the emission happening, right? Where's the main sources and which is the areas we need to look at. So getting first defining a goal before you try to tackle it. So that's something we look at. We see it with one of our large customers is Maersk Line, and they have a few weeks ago the CEO Søren Skou has announced that the company will have even more radical goals than the government has given out with regards to when the company will be carbon neutral or CO2 neutral. So that means they will also look to their vendors, and we as a port, especially at PDP, we are a relatively large vendor to Maersk Line, so we know we will get that pressure. So we have to look, and we want to be ahead of the curve. So just to give 2-3 examples, I mean, helping the vessels, helping the vessel footprint. Two things, and I pretty much think my colleagues in Hamburg and Rotterdam, they're looking for the same, is obviously cold ironing, Landstrom, to see that ships can keep the auxiliaries off once they are alongside. And the other one is to look into alternatives for tugs and pilot boats, where I had just today quite interesting discussion with vendors. So to get what kind of alternative you want to go. So do we go, for example, towards LNG, or do we jump the LNG technology and straight go into hybrid tugs, hybrid pilot boats? Does it make sense? So even this alone would help to reduce the footprint for the vessel movement in the port. On the port side itself, of course, I would say there's 2 angles. A lot is, of course, diesel/fuel saving. Also, their question is, do we go into bridging technologies like LNG for equipment or electrify more? The other one is obviously, or sometimes it's not so obvious, is to say, measure the distance equipment is traveling on the terminal, especially the horizontal transport, and how can we reduce it? And I put it regardless if it's electrical or hybrid or diesel or whatever, what is the kilometer the equipment is traveling, and how through intelligent IT, so intelligent terminal operating systems and so on, intelligent traffic flows, can we reduce this? And then in our case, again, compared to Rotterdam, Hamburg, our terminal is one big footprint. So with again 5 kilometers of key length. So if we would, with let's say 10 million container or 10 million moves, if we would save 100 meter or 80 meters per truck, we talk about 6-digit kilometers and how many 10,000 liter of diesel we would save just by more intelligent steering of the cargo flow on the terminal. So I think taking just these 2-3 points into consideration, it would be already, I would say, relatively low-hanging fruits, which would substantially reduce carbon from a terminal perspective.
You're right, it's not an obvious. That was my first thought. I was like, how much of a difference can that make? But yeah, of course, if you count it all together, in the end, it sums up to quite a lot.
Once you get the numbers, as I said, we want to get this digital emission footprint inventory to understand really where is the emission, where is it happening, and which one we need to tackle first to get the steepest impact in the beginning.
Is there something similar here in Hamburg that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. We started in 2015, or more or less we ended up in 2015 with finalizing our strategy as a smart port, and one of the pillars was smart port energy. And it's like Marco already said, we try to avoid unnecessary transportation to make it more simple. I don't want to see any empty truck driving through the port. And Marco was focusing on the vertical transport on the terminals. That's more or less the same. The necessary transport, we try to reduce the emissions. We are using on our fleet on the water side right now already all over GTL. We do a lot of emission cleaning on our vessels, and we always try to play also a role model by testing new technologies. Right now, the logical next step is using hydrogen technology. But before, we are ready for LNG. LNG is already used in the port. We were the front runner for serving onshore power supply, cold ironing, with the first machine, let's call it like this, in Altona for cruise vessels. And the Synod of the Free and Hanseatic City decided that we will implement another systems, many systems for container vessels and cruise vessels, that all the shipping lines and cruise lines have the chance to use these plug-in systems to turn off their auxiliaries and reduce emissions. But on the other hand, we have a lot of concrete projects in the context of hydrogen. We, as the Port Authority, we will implement a barge with fuel cell engine. We will implement, together with Bremen Ports, a locomotive with using hydrogen fuel cell engines. On the other hand, I think we are a bit proud. I think yesterday the Federal Minister for Economic Affairs announced that Hamburg will get also the center of an association supporting the hydrogen initiative in the way that fossil fuels are more cheap today. Hydrogen and all the other fuels are a little bit too expensive, and this kind of association they have founded yesterday or announced yesterday should, the gap, fulfill the gap that the usage of the, let's call it e-fuels or zero-emission fuels, will be supported by government with concrete money, and this will be very helpful to get the scale up as fast as possible. The Port Authority, but all the partners in the Port of Hamburg are interested, and with a real partner network that we want to fulfill the climate goals from the Free and Hanseatic City, but also from the Federal Republic of Germany, and the goals from Paris, and we always try to be a little bit faster than the existing regularies showed us.
Okay. Obviously, Hamburg and Rotterdam as well also have a very unique standpoint, or they're part of a city. Hamburg really defines itself over its port, and Rotterdam does as well. Marco, I admit, my geography is horrible. So you will have to help me a little bit on that if you are also located in or near a city and really fulfill these city goals and not just national goals.
They are not. No, that's completely different.
Okay,
in Rotterdam and in Hamburg. So we have different topics, but not this one.
Okay, so now I had to out myself here live on camera. That's okay. I can live with that. But so you have city goals, and you as a port obviously need to become CO2 carbon neutral, or as close to carbon neutral as you can become. But also the International Maritime Organization wants that by 2050, which seems so far away, but it's not, they want to limit CO2 emissions of shipping worldwide by 50%. That means you need to prepare for that as well. Not just for you to become CO2 neutral, but also for others to be able to fulfill their goals. How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't want to preview an announcement we will take in later this month.
Please do.
No. But maybe you should listen carefully to the World Port IPH conference, which will take in Antwerp next week.
Okay.
And but the only thing I can say today is Hamburg has clear targets. We started with the target tier 3 at birth. That means lower emission with fuels or something else. And the next step is zero emission at birth. And our goal is being 2040 to reach the target zero emission in port. So. And therefore, it's from the shipping side, you have to provide something, but from the port infrastructure provider, you also have to provide that there's a chance to reach that target. And that's what I have mentioned before. Hamburg will heavily invest a lot of money in shore power systems. And we also did a lot of risk analysis, for example, using LNG. Also then right now we are checking what kind of conditions have to be provided for using all kinds of hydrogen products, ammonia, methanol, or liquid hydrogen, or LOHC. And these are the next steps. And but I think all the ports, especially also Rotterdam and Hamburg, we are in very close contact. We try to have a joint approach because this is for us in the shipping industry and in the port industry very important. We are competitors, yes, but I always try to give the example, if you use shore power, it makes no sense that we have different sockets in different ports, and in fueling the same. Yeah, if you can fuel in your vessel in Rotterdam with some preconditions and they are totally different in Hamburg, that makes absolutely no sense. Same safety standards, same procedures. This is helpful for trainings, and we all in the ports want to ensure safety and security for the environment and also for the seamen.
So, Ori, what about Rotterdam? When will Rotterdam be CO2 neutral? 2040. Who gives more?
Well, I must say, first of all, that I have much less say about the matter than my two colleagues here on the panel. So, to my knowledge, the Port of Rotterdam wants to be a front runner, and I can say that also. The Port of Rotterdam is working very closely with the Dutch government, for example, on topics like hydrogen, like Hamburg, of course, is also doing. And we want to create a whole hydrogen economy in the Netherlands, not as a port, but as the Dutch government and its branches. And the Port of Rotterdam is very active in this on this topic from many sides. One is working with industry about compliance and new technologies that are coming online, but the industry is of course very restricted because of the cyclical nature of it. So we are working with them very closely to see how those things would be possible. And the second is, as a port, with the example of hydrogen, we are investing very heavily together with our governments in very new technologies, like collaboration with the agricultural sector that can take some CO2 emissions that would be otherwise emitted that are normally produced in a port, like the creation of blue hydrogen, where we want to pump CO2 as an intermediary step, not as a definite solution, into empty gas fields in the North Sea. And I could go on and on. To give a very concrete example, we are exchanging data with the Port of Hamburg today about port call data. So when a ship leaves the Port of Hamburg, we are notified, and we have very good connectivity and collaboration with them. And therefore, we can streamline the services around ship and the capacity, for example, berth capacity and planning that concern ships, both in Hamburg and in Rotterdam. And that's a great example of a collaboration and how digitalization can actually bring about also sustainability, because we know that by doing that, at least in Rotterdam, we could drastically shorten the waiting time of ships in which they typically sit, even though we try cold ironing, they sit and emit. So that's inefficient commercially, that's inefficient for the city close by. The ships are waiting at the port and outside of the port. And by exchanging data with Hamburg, something that we could achieve together, we can cut this waiting times by up to 20% today, compared to 4 years ago when I joined the port.
Guys, it's happening. We're running out of time. But I do want to let Marco answer anyways. You already said or already explained that you have a vessel operator that is going carbon neutral or going as... So what about the port? When will your port be carbon neutral? Can you give us an exact year or, like I said,
No.
2040?
No,
Who offers more?
No, I think, and there's also probably difference. We said port operator versus port authority. This is something I can't do in isolation, right? I need to sit with my colleagues from the Johor Port Authority and then with the government of Malaysia to say, look, how do we want to achieve this? So what is the Malaysian goals? What is our goals? What is the customer's goals? So that's equally important. They will have certain goals, and where we should not underestimate, we talk about logistics, we also need to talk about the customer's customer goal. So and one day the customer in Hamburg want to know how much CO2 the Adidas shoe produced in China or Bangladesh, how much CO2 footprint has these shoe produced on the way from East Asia or Southeast Asia into the store in Hamburg or in Amsterdam. So there's a lot of, let's say, a lot of data. So and we have not yet, let's say, as Hamburg or Rotterdam, done a clear defined target. We have, of course, the goals defined by the government of Malaysia. But as I said, we start to mapping. We need to see what can be done and what is realistic. This is obviously also different framework here. I mean, we talked about the collaboration, Hamburg, Rotterdam. Of course, there's a European Union. There is a unified law framework. Here in Southeast Asia, the ASEAN countries, they're working not as close as the European Union framework. So laws are not so streamlined yet as for example, is in the European Union. So therefore, I think we're a little bit behind. We have some different challenges here. There's also not so much the pressure than you have in Europe. So it's a way to go, but definitely interest is there. And as I said, the sad part at the moment is the whole Corona impact puts quite a setback, also countries like here in Southeast Asia, when I exclude Singapore, because these countries don't have, let's say, the horsepower than some European countries have, and therefore they have to put priorities and deprioritize other things at the moment. Okay.
I want to say thank you very much. That was very interesting. I have about 5, 6, 7 more questions that unfortunately I can't ask because we're out of time. But Jens, we started with you. We'll close with you. You heard what those guys had to say. Is there anything that you say, well, that's really interesting, that's maybe an idea I'll take with me to Hamburg? Or we're in Hamburg, but we'll take me to the port.
Yeah, it's always, our strategy. I know, Marco, myself, we have a close friendship, so we always try to exchange the knowledge. And as he already explained, different cultures, different rules and regularies, but on the other hand, we exchange a lot of things, for example, also about how to make custom control more efficient. I think that was a very fruitful discussion. It has only a little to do with mobile services, but if you have to stop everything very long, this also causes emissions and makes things inefficient. And Ori, greetings to Rotterdam. We go on with our Northwest European, let's call that cooperation, because we need to standardize everything, and we are all, unified in the IAPH, in the Worldwide Port Authority organization, and there we try to drive standards. And thanks also to my colleagues that there was a chance to have this chat via video.
Yeah, I also have to say thanks. I wish you guys all of luck. We'll talk maybe a bit before 2040 to see, I don't know, maybe we can kind of make a game out of it. He'll become carbon neutral the first. We'll talk about it. And I look forward to hearing more about all the efficiency driving autonomous transport systems that you guys are implementing and driving forward innovation for, maybe for moving people, but first of all, for moving goods.